County Council meeting for Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. I'll ask you to all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Alan Walter of Countywide Chaplaincy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. We honor you, Lord God, as creator and ruler of the universe. Your word tells us that righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne, and mercy flows out from your presence. We come before you, knowing that you are our ultimate refuge and ever-present help in time of trouble. We pray for the families of Clark County law enforcement officers and deputies after the devastating event that took the life of Officer Sahota. We ask you to manifest your grace and mercy to his family and all affected families. We pray for our county, state, and nation that truth and redemption would flourish at every level. Thank you for our county councilors. We ask for your sovereign oversight during this council meeting. Guide their decisions, give them wisdom and discernment. May all of us respect your name and seek the highest good for Clark County. May we find peace with you and peace with one another. In the name of Jesus the Messiah, amen.
Amen. Was certified and came forward to the council. We are going to have Rob Anderson, the petitioner, have 5 minutes to present. What I am going to do beforehand, though, is because he only has 5 minutes to present, I am going to take the liberty to read the ordinance so that we know what we are going to discuss here. So here goes. An ordinance prohibiting all mandates within Clark County that discriminate against citizens regarding their health status and/or that violates existing rights to health information privacy. Whereas Clark County is a vibrant community due to the diversity of our residents who all live here, work here, and enjoy spending time in Clark County, they should be free from discrimination and injustice. And whereas Amnesty International, renowned for championing human rights, defines discrimination as discrimination occurs when a person is unable to enjoy his or her human rights or other legal rights on an equal basis with others because of an unjustified distinction made in policy, law, or treatment. And whereas Governor Jay Inslee has unilaterally, without authorization from the legislature, required all government employees, healthcare workers, school employees, and volunteers, and many large employers to vaccinate against COVID-19. And whereas thousands upon thousands of Clark County residents have a health condition status as COVID-19 survivors, granting them durable immunity as defined by the National Institute of Health, or NIH, should not be coerced into having a COVID vaccine or lose their jobs or being denied equitable treatment. And whereas the right to be free from an invasion of bodily integrity by the state has found support in the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendments of the Constitution. Courts have generally respected the principle of bodily integrity, promoting it as a sacred, inviolable, inalienable, and fundamental, while the 14th Amendment specifically states, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And whereas religious discrimination has been widely described as also protecting moral objectors or those who hold non-religious beliefs as to what is right and wrong, which are sincerely held within the strength of traditional religious views, 29 CFR 1605.1. Both Washington state and United States constitutions protect these religious freedoms of moral objectors from contrived vaccine orders. And whereas vaccinations over time have played and continue to play an important role in public health, However, the COVID-19 vaccines are still under emergency use authorization, and full clinical trials have not yet been completed. Every person should be free to informed consent and never be coerced by threat of losing one's job or equitable access to services, freedoms to travel, and general pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as protected in the Washington State and United States Constitutions. And whereas no vaccine mandates can be enforced without violating the privacy rule implemented through the Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act of 1996, or HIPAA, which guarantees the protection of all health information and common identifiers, e.g. name, address, birth date, social security number, and whereas demanding employees to divulge their personal medical information discriminates against them based on their perceived health medical status in contravention to the Americans with Disabilities Act, 42 USC 121-12A. And whereas in 2020, Clark County Council overwhelmingly passed a resolution relating to eliminating discrimination as an effort to build a truly equitable and inclusive community, number 2020-06-06. And whereas the Clark County Council is empowered through the Home Rule Charter 1.3, quote, the powers of the county granted by this charter shall be liberally construed, and the specific statement of particular powers shall not be construed as limiting the general powers, end quote. 2.4C, to, quote, adopt by ordinance comprehensive plans and land development codes, including improvement plans for present and future development in the county, unquote. 8.7, quote, the county will ensure no person is discriminated against because of age, sex, marital status, sexual orientation, race, color. And whereas the council is considering the matter at a duly advertised public hearing and concludes that adoption will further the public health, safety, and welfare. Now, therefore, we call on the Clark County Council to immediately pass an ordinance that prohibits any and all discriminatory mandates, orders, or compulsory requirements within Clark County buildings or land use that discriminates against an individual based on his or her current health status, violates health privacy, or does not honor health, religious, or moral objections in an equitable manner. No business, government agency, educational institution, public, health-related, religious, corporate, or private organizations that operates or land within Clark County will be allowed to discriminate via employment practices or denial of services in relation to any other or future mandates or orders that discriminate in like fashion, i.e. lockdowns, face coverings, etc. Any violators will be subject to fines, risk permit denials, and risk land use permits. Now we will move to allow Rob Anderson to give the presentation on this ordinance.
Did you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Councilors? Good evening, and thank you. As I start, I want to just thank all those that I represent today, more than 100 volunteers and 11,505 signers, and we, with one voice, ask you to pass this ordinance. In beliefs, Democrat, Republican, unvaccinated, and vaccinated. The petition process is not a political instrument of mass like elections, but of a tool of representation. Hence, a small number of signatures represents a large group. For example, 111,000 people voted in the last election. This petition, we collected 111,000 people voted in the last election. We collected 11,505 signatures in less than 2 months. That represents 10% of those that voted in the last election. This is no small number and should not be ignored. This ordinance would not ban all mandates. as one of the counselors has misinformed the public that this would ban all vaccine and mask mandates. If that was the stated goal, there would be no way that this would succeed or stand legal scrutiny. This ordinance would only add an extra layer of protection, scrutiny on mandates, and challenge on behalf of the citizens all mandates that discriminate. We've seen far too many examples, but let's just take a look at a few. Last summer, we got mandates that vaccinated could take off their masks while unvaccinated couldn't. Up until recently, parents had to watch their unvaccinated students in school do invasive testing multiple times a week to play sports, while the vaccinated students didn't. Unvaccinated were forced out of jobs because companies unfairly refused medical religious objections, and now dozens upon dozens, hundreds of businesses in Portland are requiring vaccine passports to have equal access to services, which would beg the question from a moral perspective: does discrimination exist before laws are passed or courts have ruled? Of course it does. Sadly, of course it does. And it must be discussed. Some establishments are making discriminatory COVID policies beyond what the mandated by the governor. Just last night, one such establishment in the county, a little kids dance studio, notified all clients that if there were a COVID contact at the studio, that the unvaccinated would be excluded from the prepaid classes for 5 days, but the vaccinated would not. This policy is one of many examples of discriminative mandates. And honestly, the largest group that has unfairly suffered the most, not by COVID, mind you, but by COVID mandates alone, is our children. Even though not one child or teenager, thankfully, has died from COVID in Clark County, these mandates have been unfairly placed on all our children, and the mental health damage will last for years. Who's looking out for their rights? Who's going to stop these unending decrees and finally start looking at the totality of the outcomes? The petition is a political solution to a political problem. It's not perfect, but a solution brought forth by the people, calling on you to act on their behalf, and a solution that is rooted in our Constitution, that all political power is inherent in the people, and the governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. I wish we had time to present our vigorous legal defense, yet some of our elected counselors feel content in following the opinions of what the Democrat lawyers are advising them. Marching orders. In fact, Governor Inslee sent marching orders from his legal office, Democrat lawyers. And really, it's more likely that this isn't the best advice at all out there. But is that what's going to be followed? Opinions don't outweigh the obvious, that you have taken an oath, not to Jay Inslee or his mandates or policy edicts, but you are agents of the people of Clark County, bound to protect the state and U.S. Constitution rights and protections that are given. By the way, some have expressed concerns about preemption and supremacy issues. This is an easy fix. Amend the ordinance and add a severability and a superseding limitation clause, and since there are no COVID laws that protect discriminatory mandates on the books, this ordinance will stand. You are agents of the people, not sworn to protect institutions, bureaucracies, policies. You are representatives sworn to defend the rights for an overreaching government in a manner that we can't. We are a republic and the legislative body closest to the people and most responsible for protecting our liberties. Nothing in the Constitution stops the county from passing a law in the face of temporary mandates. And yes, the judiciary will have the final say, but will you support and defend discriminatory mandates, or will you stand with us and pass this ordinance? Thank you so much for your time.
My name is Julie Martin. Dear Clark County Councilors, please consider voting yes to enact an ordinance in Clark County, Washington to end discriminatory mandates against citizens regarding their medical status and that violates an individual's right to health privacy. Please defend the constitutional freedoms of citizens from mandatory vaccine mandates that force people out of their jobs and mask mandates that are harming school children and citizens alike. 11,505 Clark County citizens have signed the historic mini petition initiative to ban all mandates that discriminate. Clark County councilors do have the authority to repeal discriminatory mandates through the Home Rule Charter. You have sworn an oath to defend and protect the constitutional rights of citizens from tyrannical mandates. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is a famous quote by Thomas Jefferson. Please choose to be on the right side of history and vote yes to defend the constitutional freedoms of citizens in Clark County, Washington. Thank you.
Okay. Next person I have up is Bridgette McLemore. Please go ahead with your comment.
Yes, it's Bridgette McLemore here. While we're all fed up with the COVID and the havoc it has created, and of course in all our lives, and while pretty much all of the comments I read relate to mask and vaccine mandates, the text is broad enough that it could apply to any public health issue. Quarantine, contact tracing, TB tests for childcare workers, drug testing, school immunizations, and maybe also septic tank or food handling safety. This petition is a mandate against public health. Or maybe we believe, as Liz Pike is quoted as saying, we did not elect county commissioners to keep us safe. We elected them to protect our freedom. I disagree. Council members are our Clark County Board of Health and exercise final authority over all matters pertaining to preservation of the life and health of people within Clark County. However, that responsibility does not exist in its own right. It stems from authority under the Secretary of Health, and actions must comply with the provisions of WAC 7005. By adopting an initiative that violates state rules, members of the Board of Health could be guilty of a misdemeanor. Our public health administrator could be fired, and the state could take over control of a local Board of Health. But more than that, you are restricting the freedom of every business, organization, school, nonprofit, and church to adopt health and safety rules, leaving them in the untenable position of threatened fines or being charged with misdemeanor. It seems pretty clear to me that there is, whether or not you personally support the initiative, you have no choice.
Okay, that was 2 minutes. Thank you for your comment. I will move on to the next caller. Please go ahead.
This is Mike Terry, Clark County resident, 37 years, lifelong resident. God's blessed my wife and I with two beautiful, strong, smart little girls. And we, the people here in Clark County, understand that mandates are not laws. Legislators have not put mandates into law. We also do not have RCWs that support discrimination. We recognize the bounds our county has with the state, and this mini initiative doesn't take anything away from the state. This mini initiative only adds to the safety of Clark County by protecting our rights to not be discriminated against. Our concerns come from the existing discrimination here already in Clark County. We, the people, are seeing people in having their medical or religious exemptions not honored. They're losing their jobs. We've got many local business owners who have signs in their shops reminding the public that they do not discriminate. And you're welcome here. They're making that extra effort to try and point out they're not discriminating. I work with a lot of local small and medium-sized business owners, and I see a lot of this. There's a lot of kids who have received the shot, and kids who have not received the shot have different status and protocols for ongoing testing to play sports. There's different healthcare protocols right now that are offered within Clark County hospitals. If someone takes remdesivir and then they turn around and they need dialysis, if they've received the shot, they receive dialysis. If they haven't taken the shot, they don't receive dialysis. Birch Street Loungers in downtown Camas, they're requiring a vaccine passport for people to come in right now. This is unbelievable. We don't have RCWs that support discrimination in Washington State. This should not be happening. We're concerned about this taking root here in Clark County. It's so wrong. Making decisions for someone's health has never been a one-size-fits-all approach. Never. Our bodies have never been on limits. They're completely off limits. And the abuses of power have gone way too far. We, the people of Clark County, are completely capable of making decisions for our families and our fellow citizens in their best interest. And we've never elected anyone to keep us safe. When we elect someone, we are electing you to protect our rights. And by protecting our rights, we are kept.
Okay, that was 2 minutes. Thank you for your comment. I do have the next caller. Please go ahead.
My
Please
name
go
is
ahead with
Sally
your comment.
Snyder. 11,500 people have spoken with one voice to ban all mandates that discriminate. Please remember this number when voting. Adults are being fired from their jobs because they refuse to inject something into their body, and adults cannot get a job for the very same reason. Kids who get jobs are bribed with a $200 bonus if they get vaccinated and a $100 bonus if they get a booster. The families of seniors who graduated last year were discriminated against when the vaccinated entered the ceremony through a separate entrance and exit than the unvaccinated. Healthy middle and high school kids who just want to play sports like basketball have been forced to COVID test 3 times a week if they are unvaccinated, resulting in 30 COVID tests, while the vaccinated kids did not have to test. If you are unvaccinated and in close contact at school, you are sent home, but the vaccinated kids get to remain in school. The social, emotional, and educational devastation this is doing to our county is horrific. How many more years will you allow this discrimination to continue? We did not elect you to keep us or our children safe. We elected you to uphold the constitutional rights of the citizens in Clark County. 11,500 citizens have spoken to ban all mandates that discriminate. For those that continue to support bribing, coercing, segregation, and discrimination as a result of these COVID mandates, the people will vote you out of office. Thank you.
Okay, next up, caller, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi there, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Scott Miller. I'm calling in as a concerned parent, Clark County resident. I guess I can say I used to be a pediatric expert. And I've been listening to Dr. Melnick's comments and assurances that this inoculation is safe. And I can say unequivocally that he has completely misled this committee on the safety data, and apparently really the only thing he's able to provide is state-sponsored propaganda. The entire reason for a vaccine is to prevent contracting an illness. And that's what we were told. If you get these shots, we prevent contracting the virus. Then it was to prevent the spread. Then it was to prevent symptoms, then hospitalization, and now it's supposed to prevent death from COVID. So they've been wrong on every level. And now they're trying to tell us that we're going to allow, I guess, our government to use our children as test subjects to keep us safe. I think it's really important that the commission thinks about what is being asked to be imposed on our children with no safety data. And I can tell you again, and this is anecdotal, but parents still reach out to me telling me stories about what has happened to their children's side effects, aneurysm and death for a teenager. Myocarditis, Dr. Melnick, myocarditis is not reversible. I don't have the data of the, how many 100% increase there is in damage in young children, young adults from this inoculation. So there's just so much misinformation that is being spread on every level. And to the commission, remdesivir is deadly. I listened to the January 26th meeting with the hospital doctors at the hospitals.
Okay, thank you for your comment. That was 2 minutes. I will move on to the next person. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is John Brewer, 30-year resident of Clark County. I just wanted to remind the council that in May of 2020, Governor Inslee was sued in federal court for violation of civil liberties, and Attorney General Ferguson argued in his defense that plaintiffs lacked standing because the governor had no authority or intention of enforcing the mandates. The judge agreed with him and threw the case out. Fast forward today, the governor sends you a letter attempting to enforce his mandates. He can't have it both ways. He either misled a federal court or you can safely ignore his bullying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and next up I have Donna Sinclair. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much. My name's Donna Sinclair, and I am one of We the People as well. I'm an American. I oppose this initiative, and I reject the idea that it represents the majority in Clark County. Most citizens are unaware of efforts to overturn common sense public health measures. They understand that the role of the county government is not just to protect individual freedoms, but also to balance those freedoms with the general welfare. The notion that it's medical discrimination to require masks inside public spaces in a pandemic of airborne virus is both illogical and anti-historical. Human communities have long had such requirements during times of medical crisis, including the 1918 flu. In earlier times, forced quarantines prevented people from leaving their homes. These were common sense measures to prevent the spread of contagious and deadly diseases. So humans have known for centuries that covering one's mouth or nose when disease is rampant slows the spread. We knew this even when we didn't understand germ theory and had not identified viral organisms. Meanwhile, public health departments and requirements rose alongside urbanization in the 19th century. These boards typically included medical professionals or listened to their recommendations. Today, the medical community, the preponderance, agrees on the usefulness of masks. It's not perfect, we know that, but it's one of several measures that they recommend. As a society, we have a lot of rules that guide us: stop signs, stoplights, sewers, garbage pickup requirements, and more. Establishments that cater to the public cannot discriminate based on protected classes of race, sex, or religion. But we have all kinds of public health guidance in stores and restaurants. No shoes, no shirt, no service, temperature regulations. Are these discriminatory? No, they're meant to prevent the spread of disease and illness, and they've been put on place based on expert input over time. So I don't want my county sued. I want you to actually protect the general welfare, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you very much.
Okay, next I have a person who's called in, so please go ahead with your comment.
Hey, you guys. Thank you for taking comments tonight. My name is Heidi St John, and I'm calling you from my home here in Battleground, Washington, urging you to vote yes to protect the precious citizens of this county from the discrimination that is being normalized by many of the callers I've just heard for the last few minutes here in Washington State. Please remember that your first responsibility as an elected official is to safeguard our freedom. You guys, there will be other viruses after this one. The founding fathers were aware of illness when they drafted the Constitution, and yet their focus was on the liberty of the citizens of these United States. Discrimination is wrong. In the past few months, my children and I have been spit on, yelled at, cursed at, and followed by people who believe they have the right to treat their fellow citizens in a hateful way based on these mandates. Mandates like the ones that we are asking you to safeguard us from are eroding relationships and harming the unity that we so desperately need in our country and in our
One second, just a minute. I just want to announce that it was moved and seconded.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. Thank you. There's no doubt that this pandemic has had extraordinarily impact on everyone, whether they're healthcare workers, whether they're seniors, our kids in school, our athletes, our families, everyone. We've lost 10,000 people here in the state of Washington alone from COVID. But we're here tonight to talk about this particular ordinance. And while there are, I think, really too many things that are really not accurate in this mini initiative, too many unintended consequences. And the fact of the matter is that, Grace, the fact of the matter is that we have the authority to enact proposed ordinances as permitted by the state constitution to the extent proposed ordinance does not violate state or federal law. Local governments cannot have ordinances that conflict with state law. And this memo is available to everyone after we waived it tonight, so I'm reading just portions of it because I think they're pertinent. The governor's proclamation has the force of state law. Additionally, if an arm of state government has regulations, those too have the force of state law. Clark County is an arm of the state government. So we have the obligation to not pass ordinances that are in conflict with state law. And we heard a lot tonight about the oath of office that we took when we were sworn into office. And the oath is to support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the laws of the state of Washington, and to faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of this office. And I think that's what I'm doing tonight, and I think that's what all of us are doing tonight. And so given that we have, I think, clear guidance that we don't have the authority to pass an ordinance or a law that conflicts with state law, is the reason that I made the motion. I do just want to finish up and thank our public health officials, our people who are still on the front line dealing with this pandemic, hospital workers, nurses, doctors, because we're still impacted by it. We're still on a global pandemic. We're not out of this yet. And I just hope that by the time we get to the end of this year, we move on to more normal. But right now we're not there yet. And we need to do our best to protect each other and our families. And to Councilor Medvedji's point, we have the duty and obligation to keep the county in mind and represent all the citizens in the county. Thank you.
Other comments? You're muted, Councilor Bowerman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have actually quite a few comments because I think it's important to explain a vote, and that's what I would like to do. I think that we think and we vote in part, not in total, but in part as an outgrowth of our life experiences. And so I would like to tell you who I am relative to the mini initiative because it's relevant. I have the same concerns that many of us do about the county council not having authority to enact any ordinance that is less restrictive than the current state and federal mandates, vaccination mandates. However, my experience relative to COVID probably differs from many because I volunteer in a multi-year national study on the efficacy of vaccinations. So, for example, I can tell you almost any day, pretty close to what my antibody level is against the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, including the receptor binding domain, on a scale of 0 to 2,500. And to date, I've had antibody tests that are given at intervals both before and after vaccinations, and by later this week, I will have had 4 vaccinations, 2 base and 2 boosters. Countless emails and calls challenge us on a decision of liberty or tyranny, but that's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance calls for no violation of health information privacy, and the U.S. has guaranteed that for years. We need no county ordinance for medical privacy. And it also says that the county must prohibit mandates that discriminate against citizens regarding their health status. Well, think more deeply about what that might mean. I remember the day when discrimination was charged by freedom-loving smokers who weren't allowed to smoke in a private grocery store. And similarly, we are discriminating against immunocompromised citizens if we don't allow a business to require masks or vaccinations when it wants to follow federal or state guidelines. But does this ordinance mean that employers are discriminating if they isolate employees with COVID? Remember, the employee's health status is COVID positive, and the ordinance says that discrimination against citizens regarding their health status is prohibited. And people unknowingly in the presence of a COVID positive person might not want to be exposed because of association with a pregnant daughter or a tiny grandchild or an ailing father, whatever. And if healthcare facilities or religious organizations were deprived by the county of being able to require employees to mask, the government is actually discriminating against the immunocompromised. And I can't vote for that kind of discrimination. The immunocompromised are advised that close contacts be fully vaccinated. And it's necessary that facilities wanting to provide that safe environment be allowed by county government to do so and be free to tell customers that that's their policy. But that's not the end of unintended discrimination from this ordinance. Maybe you know someone whose loved one died because they couldn't get into a hospital for needed surgery with a hospital filled with COVID patients. I do. Needed cancer surgery had to be postponed for 3 months and the patient died. COVID patients occupying the hospital beds were not discriminated against, but those extremely ill who couldn't get health care were denied hospital entry, which is the ultimate in discrimination because of their health status. And I can't support that discrimination being fostered by the county government through this ordinance. I'm also very concerned about the impact on business, having been in business ed for 40 years of my professional life. I don't support the president's orders to mandate for private business, nor do I support the governor's orders to mandate for private business, but in exactly the same way, I do not support the county government pulling freedom from religious organizations or private business. So then I read in this ordinance that no business, health-related, religious, or private organization that operates on land in Clark County will be allowed to discriminate via employment practices, and that any violators subject to fines and risk land use permits. So what is the county going to do? Send in the sheriff to arrest those business owners so that the county can fine them or interfere with land use permits? Federal, state, or county government control over private business, in my judgment, does not fly. County government mandating what business can't do. For example, if a religious-based health organization wanted its employees with patient contact to have vaccinations and masks, and some of us might want to patronize there, by the way, this initiative says that the business is subject to fines and risks land use permits too. This ordinance is overreaching and imposing on the freedom and liberty of private business. And I've got to say one last thing. I'm just really concerned about the rhetoric that surrounds this ordinance, this topic, and in fact, our community. Both sides truly flaunt the word science as if they own it. And there are people on both sides who probably don't even read one refereed medical journal, but are very confident about their knowledge. Neither side is worthy of shame and mockery. And to an extent, our community is doing that now. And what I do appreciate about all involved tonight is a healthy care for this county. We care, and that's very important for us to carry home as a take-home message, not one of shame of the other side, but of appreciation for the fact that we do care. Thank you.
Chair?
Councilor.
First, Councilor Bowerman, I think you said that all very well, and I appreciate you saying it. We've been operating under pandemic restrictions for 2 years now, and understandably, we're all growing tired of the measures that we put into place to protect the public health. But this mini initiative won't move us forward. The ordinance would put the county and every business, organization, and agency within it into conflict with state and federal law. The county does not have the authority to violate state and federal law, nor does it have the authority to force those within the county's boundaries to do so. Our job as counselors is to make decisions that benefit the whole. Rights are not absolute. One individual's rights do not include the right to bring harm into the public square. I believe that every counselor did read all of the public comment that we received. One of the ones that we received was from a community member who had a comment that resonated strongly with me. And he reminded this council that the answer to the question, am I my brother's keeper, is supposed to be yes. This ordinance would do substantial harm to Clark County and its residents, so I can't support it.
Other comments?
Just a few. I had a lot prepared, but everyone's taken my thunder, especially Karen Bowerman. Thank you for sharing all that. And, you know, I've spent a life in law, and to me, I'm proud of my country. I love my Constitution. I've sworn an oath to it over and over and over again. And we are a country based on laws. We can't do what this mini initiative wants us to do. It would be a violation of law, plain and simple. And so I can't add or detract from what's been said previously. Julie, you covered all the legal points very well. The only point that really stuck with me, and one of the constituents said it tonight, it kind of just was a fleeting moment. I mean, I've always done what I was told to do. I'm a rule follower. And if the government told me to take 9 anthrax shots, I said, yes, sir. Give them to me, because I know it's for our good. It's for our force protection. Now, you know, being in the military is a little different. But all this rhetoric about liberty and freedom, and some of these comments tonight were pretty threatening, I thought, and really poorly stated. You know, I always saw and thought of George Washington as probably our first and premier patriot. And he probably was the first in our country at a time of dire need to save it, to create it. He ordered his troops and those families that were struggling in Valley Forge and elsewhere to get vaccinated, because he needed to save our country's force. It was probably the first mandate out there. And are we now changing history? He wouldn't be a patriot today because he wanted to do what was best for our country and his forces and their families? I think not. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your comments. I have some comments as well. I'm going to be voting against this motion. And here are some of the reasons. Sometimes there are laws that are just wrong and bad, and we need to act against those laws. I think the laws that the mandates that the governor has placed upon this state are bad mandates. After all, he closed churches and kept pot shops and liquor stores open. How does that sound? Doesn't sound right to me. Next, we are a form of government that represents the people. This initiative, or the possibility for this initiative to come before us, is a way for the people of this county, individuals, to come to us and address us, to ask us to change what is going on in this county with discrimination with regard to masks and vaccines. This is their only way to do it. And I think that we need to honor that. We need to listen to that. We've talked about the cost of loss of funding to this county. What about the cost to the kids and many older adults that have been totally isolated and frankly died alone because they were isolated because of this, because of these mandates, partly because of COVID itself, of course, especially at first when it was ravaging. But the idea that in the United States of America, we don't have bodily autonomy to be able to turn something down, to be able to turn the shot down or lose our livelihood, it is wrong, wrong, wrong. I believe the rhetoric on both sides is pretty sharp. We heard it from both sides, and I understand that. But I think that this divisiveness, the dividedness of this county, the hate that goes back and forth, the hate emails that I have received, you would not believe, or I don't believe them. I mean, civil discourse these days is just gone. And it disappoints me greatly. But what it does express is there are very strong feelings on both sides. Somebody said the Colombian, according to the Colombian, a majority of people want us to vote no on this. The Colombian, please. That newspaper is a rag. It doesn't give you the truth. So forget what the Colombian has to say. So that said, if we are done with the discussion, I guess we will take a vote on this.
Madam Chair, if I might, I'm sorry if I might. Only because I came behind Councilor Bowerman and I didn't have a chance to comment, and I do appreciate your comments, Councilor Bowerman. Actually, my mother has had a fast-growing tumor and could not get into the hospital. I mean, anyway, we've had to deal with it because of COVID. So for all the reasons stated, yours, whether they're legal, whether they're personal, I appreciate your comments and wanted to let you know that while we were still on the record.
Can I just comment on something you just said, Chair? Because I think we did provide a forum. I am personally very appreciative of everything I've heard, and I'm sure the governor's going to hear this too, through one way or another. So the people's voices were heard. And so I do thank all those, except those that were bullying and threatening on both sides of the issue. I don't ever appreciate that. But I appreciate all the organization, all the work that went into gathering these signatures and elevating the discussion, and all that is wrong with these mandates. I mean, we haven't put any mandates in place at the county, and I hope people realize that. These came from elsewhere. I'm not criticizing them here, but I'm just saying that, this is a good conversation to have, especially as we're heading into Omicron and hopefully heading out of this pandemic. I don't think it'll be much longer. Let's stick to the best health advice we've been given, which is washing hands, wearing masks, getting vaccinated, staying home when you're sick. All of those things are just plain prudent measures.
Okay, with an ordinance, this is a motion to reject, but it is an ordinance. Do we have to take a roll call? I think we do.
Yes, yes, you do.
Okay. I don't know who's there to call the roll, but will you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair, I will. Counselor Lentz?
Aye.
Counselor Olson?
Aye.
Counselor Bowerman?
Aye.
Counselor Medvigi?
Aye.
And Chair O'Brien?
Nay. Motion passes. Okay, I believe that's all. Well, do we have any counselor communications, or have we communicated enough?
I think we have.
Any other counselor communication? County Manager, do you have anything for us this evening?
No, I don't have anything further for you. Thank you.
Okay. Our business is concluded. We are adjourned. See you in the morning.